The weather changes, guys start putting their boats in the lakes. We have tons of lakes around here, obviously, and there's nothing more fun on one of these beautiful spring or summer days to gas up the pontoon. And going hand in hand with that, obviously, you don't just fill up the tank on the boat for the motor. You fill up the cooler with the cocktails, with the drinks, with the booze, and then you head on out there. And Michigan's laws for using alcohol, consuming alcohol on a boat, are quite a bit different than drinking and driving in a car. And these can be some tricky legal problems to navigate, but there's some really interesting nuances that is imperative that you know before you go out and start boating this summer. And also definitely you need to know if you end up getting stopped by some kind of marine patrol. Our phone starts ringing off the hook, especially on these Fridays and Saturday nights, when somebody has been stopped by some kind of marine patrol while they're out enjoying their boat. And the next thing you know, somebody's writing them a citation or trying to arrest them for drunk boating, basically operating a boat while under the influence of intoxicating liquor. Today, I'm going to go over 7 main points that everybody who's about to head out on the lakes this year in Michigan really need to know. If you understand these 7 points, you're going to be in a way better and safer position and probably not run afoul of the law. To kick things off, I think we can all agree that operating any sort of a motorized vehicle, be it a car, be it a boat, be it an airplane, be it a tractor, be it a piece of heavy machinery, is not inherently safe if you've had too much to drink. And so, number one, before we jump into any of this stuff, I just want to reiterate the importance that it is to drink and have fun, recreate on the lakes responsibly. And a boat is not like a vehicle. They don't respond as fast, and it's not like you can just necessarily pull over. People can drown in the water. People fall off boats. This happens all the time. And we also don't get as much experience in operating our watercrafts as we do our vehicles. So when you add a lowered reaction times and safety things, coupled with not as much as experience as operating a motor vehicle, that can really end up giving us the perfect storm for a disaster. And we definitely want to avoid that. So that really is the first thing that we have to keep in mind. Number one, don't consume too much alcohol and then think that you're going to operate a boat safely. Don't do it. You can't just go out there, get plastered, and zoom your boat around and not expect legal problems. Never mind the safety issues. Point number 2, it's really important that we understand I'm going to refer to them as B.U.I. laws in the state of Michigan, boating under the influence of alcohol in Michigan. Now, Michigan actually has a specific set of laws that address operating boats on Michigan's lakes, and it's under MCL 324.80176. And that basically says that it's illegal to operate a motorboat while a couple different things. Number one, under the influence of alcohol or controlled substances, all right? So that's sort of a general thing, right? You're not supposed to be under the influence of that. You cannot have a blood alcohol content, a BAC, of 0.08% or higher. Now, that's the same standard Michigan now has for driving a vehicle for an OWI. You cannot be visibly impaired due to alcohol or drugs. What does that mean? Well, a lot of times when we drink too much, or if somebody's, hitting the a little too much or doing other things, they could be visibly impaired, right? They might not be able to operate the vessel in a safe way. They might be swerving around. It's kind of obvious. Visibly, it is obvious, right? You can't do it. And you cannot really have any amount of Schedule 1 controlled substances in your body. So that's a quick recap of the actual law. Now we're going to break it down even further. Important point number 2. It's important that you know what the penalties for boating under the influence can be. Now, the first offense for violating that law is a fine between $100 and $500. And by the way, I should have mentioned before that a first offense is a misdemeanor. It's a misdemeanor, right? So the kind of misdemeanor it is up to 93 days in jail. Is it unlikely that you're going to go to jail if you get convicted or plead guilty to boating under the influence as a first offense for 93 days in jail? Yeah, that's extremely unlikely, but there are many judges, especially in some of these resort towns that have had a history of people getting injured or worse on the lakes, that will make you do jail. They take it very seriously. People don't want other people getting hurt on their lakes when other people are just trying to have a good time. They can also give you up to 45 days community service. Now, this I do see a lot, especially in Southwest Michigan. It is not uncommon at all to have some sort of lengthy community service sentence imposed if you are convicted of boating under the influence. And this last chunk here, this one really throws people for a loop for a while. It is possible for the courts to suspend your boating privileges for 1 to 2 years. So they can actually say you are not able to operate a boat on lakes for 1 to 2 years. So that wraps up what happens with a first offense, B.U.I. Let's talk about a second offense. So if you have a second offense within 7 years, okay, it's still a misdemeanor, all right, but they can give you up to a year in jail. Technically, the law, I believe, specifies that there's almost a 48-hour minimum jail sentence you have to serve, but it can go for 48 hours to 1 year in jail. The fine for that second offense within 7 years is between $200 and $1,000. This gets pricey. You don't want to do it. They can also assess up to 90 days of community service. That's a lot of free work. That's a lot of time helping the dogs out at the pound or whatever else that you're going to do to help serve your community and give back. And finally, a second offense within 7 years is going to result in a mandatory suspension of boating privileges for 2 years. For 2 whole seasons, you are not going to be able to go out and operate a boat and go out there with your friends. And if you think about it, guys, that is a pretty hefty penalty. And one of the main reasons you should really take this seriously as well. You know, we in Michigan, we're blessed with amazing lakes. And when the weather's fantastic, those days are absolutely unbeatable. But we don't get that many of those days. You know, I mean, you get Memorial to Labor Day, and if you're a little bit lucky, you get into October. You don't want to ruin 2 fantastic seasons by getting your boat privileges suspended for 2 years. It's just not worth it. And finally, we got to talk about the most serious consequence here. If you have a third offense, boating under the influence, you are going to be charged with a felony. Now, this does happen every single year, and this is no laughing matter whatsoever. The financial fine for a third offense, felony boating under the influence, is between $500 and $5,000. And I can tell you, many of the area courts in this area will max out the fine. But the fine's going to be the least of your problems because that's just money, right? You could figure out a way to make it. The big problem is you can be imprisoned between 1 and 5 years. And there are people serving prison sentences for third offense boating offenses here in Michigan. Do not go to prison over drinking too much and operating a boat. It's not worth putting other people at risk, and it's not worth just throwing that amount of time away of your life when you can be productive and have more fun. Of course, it probably goes without saying as well, but it's part of the law. It's going to be a permanent revocation of boating privileges. Now, if there is a chance, apparently, and I have not personally done with this, but there's a possible appeal time if your boating privileges are permanently revoked. I don't know of any of my colleagues that have done that either. There may be some out there, but let's just not go there. It's simply not worth it. Now, the fourth thing you really need to know about is that there are some penalty enhancements depending on the situation and how you were caught and what happened. Now, I was just giving you in the last point number 3, the various penalties if you are convicted of a first offense, a second offense, or a third offense. But lakes can be dangerous places where injury or death is a very real possibility. If you commit one of these offenses, boating under the influence, and a serious injury occurs because of it, even if it's a first offense, you can get a fine between $1,000 and $5,000 and up to 5 years in prison. That could be a 5-year felony and permanent revocation of boating privileges. So that's if you cause serious injury. It gets even worse if somebody dies, causing death. And that fine can be between $2,500 and $10,000. You can do up to 15 years in prison and, of course, permanent revocation of your boating privileges. Quite frankly, if you end up having to do 15 years in prison, the financial fines and the permanent revocation of boating privileges probably doesn't mean a whole lot, right? But this is not an area where you want to mess around because there are people every year that unfortunately get sent to prison for a long time for causing death while they're out drinking too much on their boat. And it's not even just about the legal ramifications, but think about, I know you don't want to think about it, but you have to think about how rough would it be to live your life knowing that your irresponsible actions took the life of another while everybody's out trying to have a good time. It's just not worth it. I can't stress it enough. And I don't say that to be doom and gloom, but that's just the reality. And these situations happen a lot. You know, a small injury on a boat can lead to somebody falling in the water and drowning, and that's causing death, and that's going to be a big issue if you find yourself in that situation. The fifth thing you need to know, and this is probably something I should have put up at the front because this is an extremely common issue you need to be aware of, and that is underage boating and alcohol. So you need to know in Michigan, there is a zero tolerance policy operating a boat with having any alcohol content if you are under 21 years old. I'm going to say that again. If you are under 21 years old, you cannot operate a boat or a personal watercraft with any body alcohol content. Now, that's rough. That's rough. I'm going to admit that it's rough because beaches and drinks and good time and cocktails and sun and sand, it all goes together, right? It all goes hand in hand. But if you are not 21, you cannot do this. And the first offense right there is $250 if you do it, plus whatever other fines and issues that they can give you if you're a first, second, or third offense. And community service can be given up to 360 hours. If you are under 21 and you want to know a surefire way to screw up your summer, consume alcohol and go get caught boating. You don't want to do it. And the judges in this region, they will impose that maximum penalty, and they'll make an example of you. Parents, I got to give you the heads up on this as well. This is critically important to have in the back of your mind when you're out there with your young adults and your older children. I'm talking about 16, 17, 18, 19, really especially the 18, 19, 20-year-olds who are home from college. As a parent, you're probably out there, if you're anything like the lakes that we frequent sometimes, you're probably out there with your kids, and you're out there with your kids and their friends. And let's face it, it's a reality. When your 20-year-old son or daughter is home from college and they got their buddies out, a lot of times parents aren't real strict with the no alcohol policy. And parents can go out with their kids on the boat, and the parent might say, and I've seen this, I've literally dealt with this exact case. A parent says, hey Johnny, here, grab the wheel for me real quick. I want to jump on the tube in the back, run us around. And Johnny and his girlfriend were having a couple of beers, on the down low up on the beach, before they headed out. And the next thing you know, you've got the Marine Patrol coming over because they saw Johnny driving the boat and they want to do an inspection. They want to see papers and everything. And they ask Johnny if he's drinking, or maybe they smell a little alcohol. And nobody really meant for Johnny to really operate. Like he wasn't the main one doing it, but he took the helm for a little while because his dad wanted to, or his mom wanted to go ride the tube, and boom, Johnny is in a whole heap of legal trouble. You need to know that the zero tolerance policy is something you can't mess with. You got to have that in the back of your brain. If you're hitting the bottle, you're not hitting the throttle. Do not boat under the influence of liquor, especially if you're under 20. The sixth thing that you really need to know, and this is something we get asked quite a bit, is do implied consent laws and chemical testing laws, just like we have for DUI and drunk driving, apply to boats? Because you don't really need a driver's license to go out and boat, although you do need a boater safety certificate if you're under a certain age. Maybe we'll make a video about that later. But the answer actually is yes. By operating a boat in the state of Michigan, individuals are consenting to a chemical test if they're suspected, if there's a probable cause to believe that they are boating under the influence of alcohol. And a chemical test is, which I've made a couple of DUI videos. You might want to poke around the channel and find them. A chemical test is not just a PBT, the little roadside machine. If you are suspected or arrested or taken into custody and they want to do a blood draw on you, or they want you to blow into an intoxilizer machine or a data master style machine, you have to do it. And if you don't do it, if you refuse to submit to the chemical test, they're going to give you a civil fine up to $500. And your boating privileges are going to be suspended for at least 6 months. So you're not going to be out there boating for the rest of the season. And I'll tell you this, I know we're talking about suspension of boat privileges and such quite a bit. I've had people ask, well, who really monitors that? You're right. The Marine Patrol isn't out all the time. Well, let me give you a little secret. The Marine Patrol keeps very, very close tabs in all the jurisdictions around here. They keep tabs on which lakes are having the most B.U.I. activity, and they start to focus in on those. And it's amazing to me how many times people have said, well, we've never seen Marine Patrol on this lake until Johnny got hit with it. And then the next thing you know, they're out here every weekend because maybe they picked up one or two other guys on that weekend and they know it's kind of a hotbed of activity. And then they start targeting people. And they'll take it's not uncommon at all. They'll take photos of your boat and they keep logs. So they will go and retarget areas that they think are common repeat offenders to make sure that there is compliance and see if anybody is maybe not complying with a boat suspension. Point number 7, which is probably the biggest question, the biggest thing of all that you really need to know about. The first thing that people usually ask me when they call our office after they've been stopped for drinking and boating is, what impact is this going to have on my driver's license? Because, it goes to figure, it kind of feels like a DUI arrest, right? It kind of feels like a drunk driving situation. There is not a direct impact from a boating under the influence conviction on your Michigan driver's license. Boating under the influence and driving under the influence, BUIs and DUIs, are treated separately. One does not necessarily enhance the penalties for the other. So just because you get stopped or convicted or something on the one does not mean that it transfers over to the other. But wait, there's one little caveat to that. What it can do is it can count as a prior DUI if you get charged with a DUI. What do I mean by that? Well, let's say you have a completely clean record and you're out there and you're having a couple too many pops. You get stopped by Marine Patrol and you end up getting a ticket or convicted of boating under the influence. You deal with that ticket, you deal with everything, you think everything's fine, you get your boating privileges back. And then a year and a half, 2 years, 5 years later, you end up getting pulled over for suspicion of a DUI. You can be charged as driving under the influence, operating while intoxicated, second offense, even though the first offense was boating. And that's a little bit of a technicality that we've had to work through for a couple of clients. We have experience doing it, and that is tricky. But it's crucial if you find yourself in this situation that you get competent legal counsel who has specifically dealt with this matter, because there's some nuances. There's probably some motions and some negotiating that has to happen on behalf of your attorney with the prosecutor and some digging to make sure that you don't end up in a really bad situation. Don't assume just because it doesn't hit your driver's license that a BUI is not a big deal. It is. Now, all these important points we've been talking about might seem like a bit of a Debbie Downer, but it is important to keep in mind, open alcohol is legal on boats, but you got to just be smart with it. Passengers who are enjoying the day can legally drink on a boat in Michigan. You don't need a chauffeur's license or anything like that, like is the case with driving a vehicle. But the important part is the operator, the guy at the helm, on the wheel, operating the throttle. He cannot be impaired. So what do we do about this? Well, the best practices are designate a sober operator, especially if you're towing kids on a tube or water toys and that kind of thing. You need your wits about you. You need to be safe. You need awareness, and alcohol impairs that ability. And having a designated operator can be the difference between a fantastic afternoon out, and there's always time for a couple of beers and cocktails when you're done, and having some sort of a tragedy or a really expensive mess. It costs a lot of money to hire an attorney and deal with the potential ramifications if this is a charge that you end up with. And I always tell everybody best practices are avoid open containers of alcohol anywhere near the helm of the boat. All right? If your boat's like mine and has a cup holder literally on the console that's hooked to the steering wheel, don't put alcohol in that one. Keep the alcohol in all the other cup holders on the boat. That way, if you end up having an encounter with a Marine Patrol officer, they can see that there's not alcohol or cocktails right there within the immediate grasp of the operator. That could go a long way in helping you stay out of trouble. Bottom line, the lakes are calling. It's important to get out there and have a ton of fun with your family and friends. You really should enjoy the area's lakes, but you really need to know these points that we're going over because you don't want to ruin your summer. If this content has been helpful for you, do me a big favor. Like the video, subscribe to our channel, and watch our other videos. We got a bunch of other videos on DUI, driver's license issues, and all sorts of other criminal charges. We've helped tons of people in these kind of situations like boating under the influence, and I'm sure we could probably probably help you out as well. So if you or somebody you know needs legal representation, give my office a call here at the Stickley Law Firm. We'll do our best to help you out. And in the meantime, check out this video over here about what you need to know before you hire an attorney when you're charged with illegal. Stay safe, have fun, and we'll see you real soon.